for the last day and a half and having some discussions which I know at some points were emotionally charged and difficult. I want to thank you for abiding by our operating values, which we discussed, on respect and dignity, and also on being open and curious, and to balance airtime with your neighbors and your colleagues, and ensuring that everybody got an opportunity to participate. So thank you very much for that. Just to close off, Neil has a few points that he'd like to make, and then Bruce as well, and then we'll turn it over to Chief Clarence Nelson to wrap up, to close our gathering. Just a reminder that if you do have follow-up questions for Neil about the broader process, there's a question and answer session at this table immediately at the conclusion of our meeting today. So thanks very much.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So what I want to do is a few things. Thanks. I wanted to sort of revisit what the purpose of our time together was, and sort of give you a sense of the document, as well as try and communicate back some of the things that we've heard over the past day and a half. So bear with me, because we've heard a lot, and I think this has been quite a valuable sort of experience, at least from our perspective, sort of hear some of the, the things that are burning issues for this group, and to definitely sort of expand on our understanding of what this document should look like and what we want to capture in it. So just to review, what we wanted to do with you over the day and a half was a few things. Really obtain input to what kinds of information are we trying to incorporate into this report. What are the best available sources of information to say the things and communicate the things that need to be captured in order to inform a planning process about diverse communities within Pensima. So to that effect, specifically we're talking about different marine activities, talking about these community profiles, and talking about sort of the trends and all of that, and how culture weaves into all of those things, whether they be communities or activities. The second objective was to provide some input on sort of how do we summarize or analyze all of this information? What do we want to say about all of it? So that kind of weaves into that interactions and trends portion of our discussion. How do we want to capture that in this document that's being developed? And lastly, I think this was also an opportunity, to sort of engage with a group of interested parties who have an interest in this planning process as it gets going, and provide that opportunity for input to what we do on the SECOA. So those were the objectives. And I want to echo Rick's comments in saying that I really appreciate the time that you've set aside to come here for the last day and a half to provide us with this feedback. I think it's, it shouldn't be understated the importance of this in terms of informing, what further preparatory work do we need to do in order to get this planning process launched in an appropriate way. So I appreciate, we appreciate that. The other thing I wanted to sort of revisit was just to sort of say, come back to, well, what is the purpose of the SECOA? What is the purpose of this report? And to ground that in the sense that this is a baseline study that is intended to provide an overview of this information that I've just talked about, which will lead to all kinds of further work that's going to be more specific, more focused on the things that arise as priorities within the planning process. So I think that's important to emphasize. This is one opportunity for involvement in this whole exercise of capturing socioeconomic information, so that we are in a place collectively to make informed decisions and direct our attention to further work that needs to be done about this aspect or that aspect. So, what else have I got here? Okay, so I'm going to jump from that to some of the things that I think we've been hearing over the past couple days, to sort of let you know what we've been hearing. And before I launch into this, I think it needs to be made clear that there's going to be a much more detailed version of this which gets released in a proceedings report. So, you know, you can club me over the head for missing 99% of the detail, but I hope that we capture it elsewhere. So first of all, I think it's been very clear that there is an interest in the room about seeing where this information goes. So how is it going to be sort of built into the planning process? What is the report going to look like, etc.? So we've certainly heard that. We've also heard, I think it's been abundantly clear that there are a lot of issues out there that people are quite passionate about. And you know, that's important, and it's as much as it can lead to some difficult discussions, it's also an asset. I mean, there's a lot of interest in this stuff that's capital to work with in terms of making a process work. We've gotten some really good input in terms of sources of information. So you've pointed us towards some things that I think the consulting team is appreciative of sort of knowing about the existence of that information. I think we've certainly expanded the scope of our collective understanding around the interactions and the trends around some of these issues. So that's been very useful. And that, I think, will make for a better report. I also think that there's been some time over the past couple days that has also helped shape what the report is going to look like. So, you know, I think the contracting team has been quite clear that for some of this stuff, they don't necessarily have sort of a recipe for what this section or that section of the report is going to look like. Some of what they have heard over the past couple days is going to be useful in helping them construct what those parts of the report are going to look like. I think we also heard that in building this report and speaking to socioeconomic and cultural characteristics of this region, we need to recognize that there's a lot of diversity within the region, and that it's made up of communities who are in many respects quite distinct from one another, and that needs to be captured and communicated out when we're speaking to socioeconomic and cultural information. I think we heard that many of the communities within this study area are also facing a number of challenges. So that's another thing that I think is important to sort of include in what we communicate. And also, you know, the importance of First Nations in terms of their presence and their culture and their history here, and that this is sort of a fundamental part of what makes this area unique, and that also needs to be captured in what we communicate. And I think we recognize that we have further work on that front and on others to find constructive ways and accurate ways to capture that. So I think that's what I have down as some of the key messages that our group has been hearing back. What I want to do now is I want to invite Bruce Reed, the manager of the Oceans Program with DFO, to sort of tell you a little bit about what the next steps are. Where are we going with what we've heard in the workshop, and where are we going with the report? So I'll turn it over to Bruce.
Thanks, Neil. And just want to start off by thanking everybody for coming these last 2 days. I know it's a lot of time out of everybody's busy schedule, and I've heard some very constructive dialogue, and information's been passed on to the contracting team, which has, I think, been extremely helpful. So thanks very much for everybody for coming. So just to summarize on next steps, first of all, the